I remember being like 13 and 14, having some mental health issues I was dealing with very badly at the time. Music gave me a kind of like cathartic escape. Neurodivergent, non-binary, dabble in acting, modeling, poetry, and above all, shiny rock and roll, where I'm the singer of a band called Hot Apollo. I use non-binary as a kind of like simple term because more people are starting to understand it now, so I don't have to go through a whole thing. But basically, I'm James, and anything else is open to anyone's interpretation. And as such, like for instance, any pronouns are like fine by me. I am impossible to misgender.
Welcome to the One Moment Podcast. I'm your boy, Kevin Odom, your co-host here at the One Moment Podcast. Might be having another co-host join us throughout this recording. If not, then oh well. Hey, listen, folks, we got a very special, honorable guest on our show. Now, I've been following him on Facebook and social media and YouTube. An amazing musician, an amazing artist. He has come here to help us to continue break down barriers, break stigmas, everything related to mental health in the mental health field. So, without further ado, I now present to you Jaymes Buckman.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Pretty well. Happy to be a part of this. Love your mission, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So, for the audience who don't know you, I know this much about you. Start us off with telling us a little about you, just so when people do watch this, when people do watch the clips or watch the full recording, either or, they will have a sense of who you are.
Neurodivergent, non-binary, dabble in acting, modeling, poetry, and above all, shiny rock and roll, where I'm the singer of a band called Hot Apollo.
Wow. So I do want to get into to a very hot topic, and it's a very hot topic, especially in the US. I don't know about Canada, but you made the comment that you are non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
So for the audience, and I work in healthcare, so I've got a little bit of knowledge of non-binary. Can you help educate what non-binary is?
Broadly speaking, yeah. It's like a very vast, like umbrella term that, contains within it a lot of very different experiences. Like basically it means most simply that you don't fit into, either the traditional like male or female, like gender identity.
Okay.
Um,
Now,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, say in my particular case, I am, I'm very like, I use non-binary as a kind of like simple term because more people are starting to understand it now, so I don't have to go through a whole thing. But basically, I'm James, and anything else is open to anyone's interpretation. And as such, like for instance, any pronouns are like fine by me. I am impossible to misgender.
And I do appreciate that, because I know here it is a very hot topic, something that we don't get into the politics of, but we just like to definitely break barriers, break stigmas, and we support all people regardless of race, gender, culture, background, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we try to be here on the One Moment Podcast, because we're about mental health. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question related to that?
Of course.
Since when did you start feeling non-binary?
I guess like I remember like being around like 7 or 8 years old when I was like first starting to get some self-awareness, and also kind of notice, and like, I guess the people around me too. I was also sent to an all boys school. And so I was surrounded by a lot of people who, you're only like 8 years old, but the expectations of masculinity were really starting to like take form and take hold of my peers, and I just didn't feel any of that. And I realized it took a long time to like figure things out. But yeah, one thing I realized pretty early on was, for a while, I was starting to feel bad that I didn't like fit in with everyone around me. And then I realized I didn't have to, and my weirdness is part of my power, and I just like grew to embrace that. And it's not been a totally linear path, especially with the other like weirdnesses fighting around inside my head, especially over the school age times. Um, but yeah, it's been something I figured out and learned to love.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, and I do appreciate that. I appreciate you being willing to talk about that. I know one of the things that I help people, I do a lot of DBT training or dialectical behavioral therapy. And so one of the things that I help people understand is part of DBT is about taking a non-judgmental perspective with others and oneself. And so, part of what I strive to do in my clinical practice is to help people understand that regardless of whatever labels we put on people, and I love that you said that earlier on because this is where my mindset went, is that regardless of whatever labels we put on anything, anybody, ourselves, at the core of who we are, we're just another human being who thinks and feels just like the next person. Like it doesn't matter outside of that.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and that is my goal, or at least I can speak for mine. My goal, that I hope to strive is that, you know, that we're all a unique individual with our own empowerment, with our own power, with our own values, our own beliefs, our own ideologies. So I have to ask this. I have to ask this. Do you feel like the political atmosphere, do you feel like there is an attack on the LGBTQ community itself related to any aspect of that?
So I feel like culturally, Canada and America are pretty similar. Like depending on like where exactly you are. But like fortunately, I guess like legally, things have tended to be a bit like looser here in when it comes to things like like civil rights. Like we had, I think, like national gay marriage, like for instance, like a while before it was like federal law in America. If I'm like wrong, and that's like well possible, I'm not like great at you know like legal details and stuff, but like I think that was kind of the progression. And some of the stuff that's been kind of shocking a bunch of people in the community where I am, like the whole um you know trans bathroom laws. And I think just today I heard that uh your president is trying to mm, strip like even more rights away from like trans people, like declare them all like mentally ill and not like restrict like gun ownership and stuff like that is like really kind of weird and mind-blowing. And Canada is not like in lockstep with that, which, and for that I do consider ourselves a bit lucky. But there is definitely a fear, and not entirely unreasonable, that if it if the tide rises too much, like Canada is just going to follow suit, as it does sometimes. And I hope that's not the case. But yeah, a lot of things I've seen in my own community. There's this one. I've seen a lot of unity and a lot of people coming together and learning from mistakes and growing and progressing in a way I'm proud to be part of. But there occasionally see like an odd duck. Like there's this one person in our community. He used to be like a historian about like the gay scene in Toronto and like the like important events and landmarks and stuff. And he'd write these like beautiful pieces delving into his experience in the 70s and 80s. And just like around the time Trump got reelected, all his posts took like a sudden turn into very eloquent, but still very fallacious and damaging transphobia. And then he started like blocking anyone who'd even like disagree with him. I remember like talking with him and like being like very civil and warm because I'd consider him a friend before that. And I was, some people were attacking him. I was not. I was just like trying to discuss things with him because I thought he was an intelligent dude. He is. But smart people can be wrong. And I was discussing with him, and he blocked me anyway. He said, you're a very wise person, James, and I appreciate talking to you, and I appreciate that you're coming to me like this, and then block. And yeah, so occasionally, that's, they're not representative, but there are some people who are, uh, refusing to grow, and there's like digging in, and some of it might be self-preservation. I know there are some people in the queer community who think, well, I'm gay but not trans, so maybe I see the far right on the rise, and maybe they'll accept me anyway, and they won't. It's sheep trying to befriend a leopard, trying not to get its face eaten off, but
Wow. Yeah, no, and I think you're right in a lot of areas where it's a legitimate right to be afraid, especially if you feel like your rights are being attacked. There's a co-host up here. He and I talk about, two of us actually talk, three of us talk a lot heavily into culture. You know, sometimes we go into politics. It just all depends, but we talk about civil liberties, civil rights, things like that. And you're right. There is a legitimate fear across the board here in the U.S. where people do feel like their rights are being attacked, and it shouldn't be that way. Because again, for me, and this is what I try to teach, and I definitely live by, and I try to teach is we're all human beings, right? Like there's no difference between you and I. There's no difference between me and somebody else. We have our own thought processes. We have our own feelings. We're just alike in many, many respects at the core of it. I guess my question to you is, since we are on the idea of civil rights, politics, and the LGBTQ community, what do you feel like needs to be done to continue advocating for? Like, where do you, and or where do you see that level of advocation? Where do you see it needs to go from this point of where we're at in this time in our life?
I'm not a particularly keen strategist, but one thing that I know seems to help from my perspective is just like these things you're saying. You touched on this a number of times that we're all human, even with our own like thoughts and feelings. And I think recognizing that and remembering it, even when there seems to be opposition, really helps. Like dissolve some of that opposition because the vast majority of people just like want the same basic things. Like bit of comfort, some safety and security, maybe a family, like whatever. It's not like that complicated. Like most people don't want the suffering of others just for its own sake. When they do that, it's coming from usually a valid emotional place of trying to protect what they have. It's the whole like in group fearing the out group kind of thing, and that needs to be worked past, and I think it is well possible. There's actually I'm not gonna. There's a I had a family member who moved out of the big city into one of the like, most remote places in Canada, and kind of didn't really interact with real people, and definitely not anyone who was like different from her because she had like a few cousins in her like very small town she lived with, but apart from that, like she wasn't having any new experiences or whatever. But she was watching the news, the fear mongering news, right leaning, and they were showing her all these like videos and stuff of like like the scary trans people or whatever, and she kind of got a little turfified over time, and I kind of, it was hard for me to like really talk to her after that because things would just like instantly blow up into arguments. And then and she could, she's always gonna see me as her nephew, and that's fine. So like it was, my existence didn't really change her perspective. But then she met at my brother's wedding. I brought my trans boyfriend along, and he's just like an amazing person. And she hung out with him for like a little bit, and they didn't even like talk about like politics or anything. It just took her seeing that like trans people are just like real people and not scary or some other like demonic race. We're like all just people. And like she like loved the dude, and she's like, oh, I have nothing to be scared of. And then that kind of evaporated all the fear and like bigotry like pretty freaking fast. I know that's not always the case. For some people it's a lot harder, but some people, they just like need to be exposed to new things. And I do think there's so much. I mean, I see so many people like attacking transphobia with logic, and I understand that, but I think before anyone can be swayed intellectually, you need to meet them where they are emotionally, because as I said, their fears are valid, you know. But the thing that they're scared of isn't reality.
Yeah, no, I think it's really and truly just having a conversation, right? Just opening ourselves up to having a conversation about, my first transgender patient ever. I remember this like it was yesterday, okay? And it was the best therapeutic relationship I ever had. And I remember when I met with this person, I kept like I kept making I made tens of hundreds of mistakes. Okay. And finally I said, said, listen, I never, ever, rarely ever do I ever disclose, but I need to self-disclose to you because I need help. And the person was like, absolutely, go ahead. I said, listen, I've never worked with anybody, who is like yourself, right? And I'm like, I've worked with many in the LGBTQ community, but never somebody, who is like yourself. And I said, can you please help me to learn how to work with people like yourself? Right. That was my only question. And the individual sitting in front of me, they just lit up, right? They were like, oh my God, yeah, yes, I will sure enough work. Absolutely. I sure will. I mean, it was a phenomenal, phenomenal experience, just a therapeutic relationship, just how it just blossomed and bloomed. And I'm forever grateful for that person, forever grateful. Because they helped me, right? They helped me to see, even as a clinician, something that I was new to, right? To help me grow as a professional. And I mean, I am humbled to this day over my experience with that. And so I share my experience because you shared that is just through conversation. Right?
Yeah.
Just have a conversation. Allow yourself to have an experience that is different than what you know or what you have been through already. Right? That experience can help us to grow, learn, understand, adapt, change, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I do sometimes get taken to task for being a little too optimistic, almost to the point of naivety. And I know that that is something I have within me, but I don't let that blind me. And there's a man I've been like very admiring of for a long time, and especially this year, I've been thinking a lot about him. It does feel like things are coming to like another fever pitch. Man named Daryl Davis, who was like a brilliant like civil rights campaigner for like decades, and he was like very much about like the importance of empathy and just like you're never gonna like like win someone over by being their enemy. You've got to be their friend, and he like befriended like he was like a black musician in like the fairly deep South, I think, in like the '70s when he started around then, and he like like start like talking to people like heads of like the KKK, and they like be friends, and the KKK people like realized how stupid they were being for being a part of this organization, and through that like huge branches of the KKK got dismantled, and he's like de-radicalized like neo Nazis and stuff, and those ex neo Nazis have gone on to become like civil rights campaigners, anti-fascists, and so yeah, like what I say can sound like a little too naive, maybe even like Pollyanna-ish, but it can work, and it can do like great good.
No, I definitely agree. If you look at current research, current theory on building relationships, right? It actually supports what we're talking about right now. It tells me some of it says, depending on which research you do read, it does say that by seeking out a relationship with people that you don't like, you dislike, or you know nothing about, right? Like your enemies, or I'm not going to use the word enemy, but like it really fits, right? But by seeking out relationships and building relationships, that helps us to change internally and externally. And so yeah, research supports exactly what we're talking about as we speak. So I'm not in disagreement with you at all. It is about building relationships with people. Um, I remember I had a change of life about uh 13 years ago. Um, and one of my mentors, he was like, Kev, I want you to pray for your most three hated people that you dislike until I tell you to stop. Right. And so I remember I first started praying for him. I'm like, man, I pray for this stupid SOB. Right. And 2 or 3 weeks later, uh, I was I found myself praying. I'm like, in my prayer, I'm a paraphrase because that was so long ago. But I would like say, hey, I pray for their health, wealth, and happiness. Bless them more than you have blessed me. So it went off being I pray for this stupid SOB to bless them more than you have blessed me, right?
Wow.
And that's just a change, right? When we start putting others above or in front of us, right? So yeah, we're absolutely right. And that's my encouragement to anybody who's watching this. It doesn't matter if they're transgender, lesbian, gay, conservative, Democrat, liberal, what have you. Doesn't matter what their cultural background is, race, what have you. Okay. If you're watching this, you're watching any of our clips from this episode, challenge yourself. Make yourself have an experience that is different than what you've ever experienced. Build relationships with people who are different than you, right? And you can just start with one person. You can start with one person. It doesn't you don't have to build a whole relationship with everybody. You can just start with one person. Challenge yourself. That is my challenge to anybody. And I appreciate you talking to me about this because I think it's important for all of us to understand. When I say all of us, like that's the goal, right? I guess let me ask a follow-up question. Do you feel like there has been progress that has been made, or do you feel like there's been lack of progress? Like give me your perception on that.
I do think there's been a ton of progress. The problem with progress is that like you're only alive for like a bit of it. And so like you're born into a world that's already progressed so much. And so you like miss like, like emotionally, like it's never gonna feel as real like how, much worse things have been before or how much better they've gotten. Um and like we're never, we're still like I think like, like not like near the pinnacle of like a utopian um ecumenical society, but I do feel like we're always like inching closer, and it's always slower than it should be, and harder than it should be, and often more violent than it should be. And with every bit of progress, there's always like tons of pushback. Like, okay, so someone I'm very close to, who's I'd say like pretty visibly trans, um, sometimes gets in the mood where he's talking about how like sometimes he feels like it would have been better for him to have been born like 50 years earlier, because then he would have just been able to like pass and no one would have questioned it and be like, oh, that's a weird fellow, but like whatever, he's just a dude. And now like the whole like transvestigation craze means that there's like a spotlight on everyone who doesn't fit like right within like rigid gender norms. Even like cis people are catching strays. I just hear stories of people like cis women getting uh accosted and assaulted sometimes for going into women's bathrooms. Just because they have like broad shoulders or whatever, and they're assigned female at birth and they're being put through this. Which is why like taking rights away from anyone does hurt everyone. um so because there's been more visibility and people have been fighting for the right of trans people, for instance, to no longer be in the shadows and just be an accepted part of society, and that's a very worthy cause. It does mean that this there are people who oppose that, and they're placing the spotlight very harshly upon us and scrutinizing everyone. So yeah, it like that's why progress is very uncomfortable. But we are coming we have come a long way, and right now, like 2025 for a lot of us is a lot scarier than it was in, say, I don't know, 2018 or whatever. But I think it's reasonable to hope and believe that we're not going to be in 2025 forever. I do think this is a very uncomfortable time, and that's not to diminish any of the very real suffering and harm that is being visited upon a lot of people who don't deserve it. But I do think we will move past this, and we always have before. Like a lot of we've made so much progress. Talk to someone in 1925 about all the all the like cis gays and non-white gays and everyone else who's living way who has far more rights and visibility in this society than they did then. And it is staggering, but we're not dealing with 1925, we're dealing with now, and right now is very scary, but I think we'll get there.
Oh man, yeah, no, I love what you were saying on that one, and I knew that you were fixing to go back in history. That's why I started laughing. I mean, listen, in 1920s we didn't have Apple computers and phones and Android this and Microsoft this, or I mean, we didn't have none of that, right? So yeah, you are right on that one. You were sharing about something that made me think about history. You said, "Where every progress comes a lot of pushback," right? Made me think of there for hundreds and thousands of years, we thought that the sun revolved around the earth, and then we had two people behind the theory that no, the earth revolves around the sun. And Galileo was one of those who popularized that idea. And he received so much criticism, but he was shown to be right in what he theorized. So with progress comes a lot of pushback. So I definitely say you are right. It's not to diminish anything that's going on today, tomorrow, maybe next week, next month, or even previously in the last year or 2 or 3 years. But progress is progress, whether it's by a cinch or an inch, right? And I think that's important to really take hold of and remember that right now it's not the end. This is only a moment in our lives, as you were just describing. Right? 2025 is not going to be here forever. It's not going to last forever. Got 2026, 2027, so on and so forth. So no, I do appreciate it. Is there anything else that you feel like needs to be shared on this subject or on this topic to help continue to break stigmas and barriers across the board here? Do you feel like there's anything that maybe we have missed? I'm sure that we can have a whole conversation in this area.
I mean, if there is, if anyone wants to like message me or whatever and discuss, I'm happy to talk with anyone. My DMs are open. The easiest way is probably Hot Apollo on Instagram, or email hotapollo@rocketmail.com. Basically anywhere on the internet, any social media thing, you can find us at HOTAPOLLO. It's technically the band account, but no one else in the band is really active on social media, and I'm kind of the mouthpiece, I guess, for us. And so if you want to like talk to me directly, I'll be answering your messages. And yeah, if there's anything I missed or anything you take issue with or want to discuss, I'm happy to.
Thank you for that. You mentioned early on that you were also neurodivergent.
Mhm.
Now, for those of you who don't, for those people, there's many people who watch us that don't work in healthcare. Okay, doesn't understand what neurodivergent is. So before we dive off into this subject here, can you tell us a little bit about what neurodivergent is?
I mean, it's like another kind of umbrella term that encompasses like a lot of like different diagnoses. In my case, the main thing, at least at this point in my life, is autism. Um, I have also been diagnosed with OCD, anxiety, and ADHD has been something I've been labeled with a lot. I don't think I've ever like, been in a psychologist's office and heard that, but it is something I get with a lot. But yeah, those are like the main ones. And then autism is the biggest one for me. And that's a lot of people use a neurodivergent as a kind of um shorthand for like autism spectrum, but it is I do like the term because it um encompasses a wide array of things. And really I think is inclusive of people who don't have like the luxury of like, being able to afford like a formal diagnosis.
No, I do appreciate it. So tell me or tell us what does that look like for you in your daily life? Like with you being neurodivergent, what does that look like for you in your daily life? And for an example, how does it impede your day? How does it impact your day? Maybe some of your struggles.
It's like hard for me to say like exactly like what things in my daily life come from that because I've never like lived in a brain that didn't have all this stuff. Um but like some of the I think like one of the big ones would be like when I do things a certain way, like I get like very attached to that certain way. And if there is a need, if I'm gonna change it, there has to be a need. And if there is a need, I need to like completely and thoroughly understand what the need is and why I should change the way I'm doing things. Like even like simple things, like I don't know. Um, I my boyfriend like kind of took issue. I washed like, all my dishes and stuff by hand, and my boyfriend like who's a professional like chef, some like part time. Um, uh, he's also autistic, but he took issue with the way I was doing things. He's like, no, I know how to do this like like way better and more efficiently. I'm going to show you. I'm like, but I'm doing it like this. And he's like, no, but you should be doing like this. And so, he had like a long talk with me about why I should change it. And once I understood, I'm like, okay, yes, I will change it. And like, next day I'm like super into doing it his way. But before that, like, if he just said, if it been brought to me with that explanation, I would have been like very resistant. So that's like I guess a small example, but that is, I guess you're talking about daily life, and that is like one of the little things that is a manifestation of the autism.
Right. Well, I'm sitting over here laughing at you because I'm just imagining how that would play out.
Yeah.
I can only see that how it'll play out in a relationship in the household. It is, yeah. Oh my gosh, no. And I asked you to share that because you know a lot of people. There's this huge, and I want your take on it. I have experienced personally and professionally this huge stigma in mental health, or as it relates to mental health. Right, a lot of people don't really understand what mental health is. I shared this once in a, when we were doing a show. I shared this, and the individual said, and I'm not knocking religion, culture, or anything here when I say this, but the individual said, "Oh, if this person just had Jesus, they would be okay." And I'm like, "Do you believe in schizophrenia?" They said, "No, I don't. It's just that they have a demon inside of them, and once they get Jesus into their life, then they're not going to have this schizo thing anymore." And I'm like, okay. So that's why I shared or I asked you, hey, can you explain to us a little bit about what neurodivergent is and how does it really play out in your life? A lot of people, I think, don't understand mental health. What are your thoughts on the stigma there or the barriers to mental health?
I will say, when you're being around people who like at least try to understand, um, really changes like so much. Like if you're lucky enough to like be around people who at least like try to be sympathetic and then try to like see where you're coming from, at least in my experience, it really helped a ton. Because when I was like, I guess 13 and going through like a full blown like OCD spike for like at least a year, um, it really made it harder for me to connect with the people around me. In the majority. And I'm dealing with all these like 13-year-old boys who are dealing with their own stuff. It's a very like complicated time for a lot of people. And they're like we're trying to like make friends at a new school, and they're like, oh, like what's this weird kid, like he won't eat like lunch with us because he's afraid of us touching his food or whatever, stuff like that. And so like the first like few months at that new school were like, super tough in large part because of that. And then once we kind of I saw that they were putting out a bit of effort to try to see where I was coming from. It made me, want to reciprocate. And by the end of the year, it was a lot better. And then, but now it's more people are, I think, wider society is getting an idea of mental health, and more people are um, just existing with at least a higher base level understanding of these things. And and the willingness to understand is, I think, way more prevalent. And I think that just makes such a difference, just like moving through the world. It's not perfect yet, but um, again, it's slow, like inch by inch progress. But I have noticed the change between 13-year-old me and the world I live in now. And yeah, yeah, I much prefer this.
Right? No, I definitely would agree. Yeah, I would prefer to live in today's times versus when I was even 13, 14 years old. I 100% agree with you. Man, like growing up, it was rough. It sounds like I can identify with some of your experiences growing up. Now, you work as a musician. Do you feel like being non binary and also having mental health, how has that impacted your music career?
I'd have to assume they made it better. I feel like the coolest musicians are always the ones who are kind of like apart from like the mainstream. They're the ones who have their own thing going on, and yeah, like often that does like you know gender identity, sexuality, like neurodivergence, like all that like plays a role in that. I think so much like great art comes from thinking differently than whatever is the mainstream thing. In my experience, like autism like makes it like way easier to do that. And all the things, all the trouble I got in when I was a kid for looking at things from a way that wasn't promoted and encouraged, is worth it because it makes it so much easier to, you know, bring my perspective to things in my songwriting. And also, I do think if you know the trajectory, my band has kind of recently been you know breaking through you know one kind of level of I guess renown, and you know we're working to bring it higher. I'm like so thankful when I see people who've like made their art, I guess, widely received enough to get a position of influence, and then use that influence to you know stand up for the the outcast and the marginalized communities. Like one guy who there's this one musician who's just been getting a ton of coverage recently named Youngblood. He's a like kind of well, they're kind of metal artist, and like they just came out as like non-binary like a week ago, and you know it's beautiful to see that. You know they and especially in the I don't know heavy metal community is so like fraught with like contradiction sometimes because you have people like you know Judas Priest who's like you know Rob Halford is very unapologetically gay and has been ever since he started. And but you know, there are still, you know, some very vocal you know, people with a kind of regressive beliefs in that community. And you know, Youngblood got to, I guess, like they're currently the you know biggest thing in that like scene right now. And they just like came out and said, okay, yeah, I'm here. You used to me, you like me now. Now I can tell you the person you like is non-binary. And I love them for that. And yeah, people like that using their platform to spread awareness and then you know positive representation.
Wow, that is beautiful to hear. And I think, you know, one of the things that makes a difference in activism, and I say activism, I don't mean like liberal conservative right activism. I don't mean that in a on a political scale here. I mean it more on a stigma barrier scale. One of the things that I feel like part of being in the activism culture, it is about using your voice, using platforms to help make change where change is needed in life and in this world, because it is about us all feeling included. It doesn't matter regardless of anybody's background, right? It is about being included. You know, even for me, when I, you know, whenever I start a job, I want to feel included because it's about, you know, it's part of us. It's part of our creation. It's part of our makeup. So I absolutely agree with that. And that even makes me happy to hear that you have other people who are, you know, might be bigger than Hot Apollo, might, you know, might be on the same level as Hot Apollo or what have you. But even with them coming out as non-binary, it's showing you know, showing more inclusiveness across the board. So I absolutely love the fact that you shared that. I sincerely and humbly do appreciate that. So you are a musician, of course. What got you started in this musician route?
So basically, as soon as I was old enough to like walk and talk, I loved performing in all ways. I was doing like you know theater camps and stuff like that when I was like 3, and there's always something that like just really gave me a charge. You know, I was always like super drawn to it, and even when I wasn't like in any like formal activity like that, I would do it whenever I can. I remember I got in trouble a lot in like grade school for whenever there was like a slow, quiet moment in class or whatever, whenever like you know, when the teacher was like looking the other direction or ever, I'd pop on my desk and start singing like punk songs. Um and I'm dancing around and I, you know, and I also really like even then I remember like it made me feel more connected to the people around me and you know made it easier for us to like get along. I'm like, okay, I really like how even something as silly as this can like bring people together. And yeah, I never like really let go of that. And one thing I was always very good at was writing, especially lyrics, poetry. And a couple of years later, all my friends were starting to like make bands and like, you know play guitar, and they knew I wasn't really like an instrumentalist, and they hated my voice. They hated my singing voice. I'd sing all the time. They tell me to shut up. And to be fair, I was like, you know, not a good singer back then. Um, but they liked my lyrics, and they're like, you know, let's have you in the band. You'll be our songwriter. There's a drum kit at your house. You're not a good drummer, but you can do a beat, so that'll be enough. and we'll make it work. And that kind of got me into it. Then, of course, I realized that while they were very good musicians, they didn't have the discipline. I mean, we're at 14, right? They didn't have the discipline to like sit down, write songs, much less go out, play shows. So I'm like, okay, I need to start my own band and find people who are like as driven as I am. And since I was starting my own band, no one around to tell me not to sing. I decided I'd be the singer anyway. And through sheer stubbornness, I just got, better at singing. I'm not like, a virtuoso by any means. I'm not going to be singing the opera, but I did develop like a pretty solid, like, voice for my style of music.
You were 13, 14, getting into the band era. Where are you at now versus during high school, as far as like your level and competence here?
For one thing, I guess I, became a better singer. I learned how to play just enough guitar to like help with like the riff writing, which did help a fair bit. Learned how to like go out, stop waiting for like people to come to me. When I started out, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna play shows until someone gives me a record deal. And then I realized I can't, it's not really how it works anymore, regardless of what I heard from people around in like the 70s and 80s. So I got a lot bolder when it came to going out, risking putting a fair amount of money on the line to like get stuff recorded, get music videos shot. I was able to make a lot of like art I'm proud of. The business side of things, the logistics side of things, the whole like industry side of things, social media acumen, that stuff I've been a lot slower at learning. And I'm lucky I have a few people around me who are trying to help me with that stuff. And that's made a bit of a difference. I still want to get better at it though. Um, but yeah, I'm proud. Like our third album's coming out this year. We just put out our, I don't know when this episode is coming out, but it's early September where I am, and our second single from the album like just came out 2 days ago. It's called Seance. It's a goth disco tune. It's a bit of a departure from our usual sound, but there are a few like kind of experimental songs on this album. Oh, that's one other thing. I've been I was a lot less willing to experiment when I started out. I thought like everything needs to be like a very particular sound and style. And now I'm like, that's sound and style are still at the core of what Hot Apollo is. But branching outside that from time to time is a lot of fun, and really has led us down some really cool new paths.
Wow. What do you feel like is your personally here, what do you feel like has been your best, I don't know if you can even answer this, your best piece or pieces?
Hmm. Yeah, it's very hard. They're all my babies, right? But one song I love as a kind of encapsulate, because Hot Apollo, the band, has a bunch of like different moods, and we have this one song called Baby Lord. It was the first single from our first album, and I'm really proud of it because it moves through and between, back and forth, a lot of those different moods, and as such I feel like it's a great like encapsulation of a lot of the identity of Hot Apollo. And the lyrics are like it's the lyrics are based off like one of my favorite poems I've written. And so for that too, it's a big favorite for me.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, next question then. I always ask every musician this, okay? So I have to ask. In your experience, how do you feel like, or in your belief, or both, how do you feel like music helps with mental health aspect, right? What has been your experience and what do you believe in that?
Well, when I remember being like 13 and 14, and having some mental health issues I was dealing with very badly at the time. But music um gave me a kind of like cathartic escape, even let's like just briefly. It kind of like took the edge off for isolated moments in time, and those were kind of like oases in a gigantic morass of mental blackness inside my own head. And then when I started really dialing in more on making my own stuff, it became a way to channel all the like fraught emotions within me into something constructive and productive, and um taking the negativity within myself and using it as fuel for putting something more positive out into the world. And I feel like that doesn't solve any issue, including mental health issues, but it can help, like in very significant ways. And I think it's good for everyone, especially people going through stuff like that, to have outlets. And it can be art. Art's a very pretty efficient one, I'd say. But like anything, like I mean, for some people, it's like running or boxing or anything like that. Anything to take, like, because I feel like everyone has like an excess of like, emotion and energy, and like there's not always a great outlet for it. And finding an outlet and using that energy to drive towards something better, instead of wallowing or worse, can help so much with your life around you and just the world in general, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It is about arts. There's a lot of people who do creative arts, art therapy, music therapy, things like that. Now, I don't do music therapy just because that's a very highly regulated field in and of itself. I've dabbled some in the art therapy realm, right, or the creative arts. I've dabbled some in that professionally. I found it to be very beneficial. Do you feel like music is well, let me preface my next question, okay? We've talked about transgender and the LGBTQ. We've talked about politics, right? We've talked about, and I don't mean like choosing one side over the other politics, but we've talked about how its influence in society. And we've talked about your start into the music industry. Do you feel like when you are playing, or when even if you're at a some type of band itself watching, do you feel like music is unifying in and of itself? Do you feel like there's an essence of unification there, where there's no ideology, there's no politics, there's no religious separation, right? Like it's you and everybody in the atmosphere enjoying the music itself.
I think it's more about what the people listening to it and experiencing it bring to it, and in some cases, what the artist brings to it. A lot of the concerts I'm a part of, and some of the ones and some of the events I go to, um, it is a lot of people are there to come together, and usually, like often, there is like some ethos to the music, and that extends to the fans, and so people are already coming there from, I would say, a spiritually and emotionally united place. But yeah, I think there are tons of art. There's tons of art that can be enjoyed by a very diverse array of people. And if you're going to, let's say, like a Judas Priest concert, for instance, um, there's some people might just be there because they love the sound of the guitar, and some people might be there because they love the potency of you know uh, Rob Halford's countercultural aesthetic and lyrics, right? And two fans can be coming from a very different place, but they could be sitting beside each other, at the concert, start up a conversation, and like come together, learn from each other, and just be united. That's something, by a song that brings these two very disparate types of people together. So yeah, it can do that. Doesn't always. The whole, I don't know, culture war thing going on right now can turn uh even fairly innocuous art into like a very divisive thing. But I don't think it has to be that way. And I think I just in general, I think it's better to focus on what we share and go from there.
And I love the fact that you emphasized when you answered the question, right, is very subjective, because what you're going to get from a song, I'm going to get differently from a song, and vice versa. You have your artist that you like, and I have my artist that I like. Right. So I love the fact that you did bring in also subjectivity in there, because I think that's important. I think it's important,
Say,
to
oh,
no,
I
go
told
ahead.
I just occurred to me. I mentioned Daryl Davis earlier, and his whole thing started, as far as I'm aware, as a musician, where he was playing. I think he was like a kid playing piano in like a bar somewhere in the South, and a KKK member was sitting in the audience, and he kept coming back to see Daryl Davis play. Um, and he struck up a conversation with Daryl Davis, and he's like, "Hey, you're like, I don't normally talk to black people, but you're really good at piano." And he's like, "Well, yeah." And then that kind of brought the KKK guy to realize, oh, skin color doesn't matter. What matters, like good music is good music matters, good art matters, and we're all human and have the ability to create good art. So yeah, why should I worry about skin color? And that was kind of the beginning of eroding the walls. So yeah, like music can like definitely do that sometimes.
Definitely. No, 100%. I agree with you. One of the things that one of the musicians that we had is and he does a lot of music in the VA, right? Area, but he also does his own soul, has his own band, like yourself. Definitely not a rock person, but he's more of a R&B soul person. But one of the things that he said that he loves about music is the fact that it's very unifying, it's very bringing people together, and as long as it's not divisive, as you were just saying too. So I love your perspective and your take on that. Thank you for sharing that. Where do you see your music career in, I don't know, 5 years from now? Let's go there. What is your goal for your music career in 5 years?
I know where I want it to be. I'm very bad at like predicting the future. I just kind of like try to do as much as I can in the moment and hope for the best. I'm not like a great strategist. But yeah, I'm trying to push it as far as possible. Honestly, I do want Hot Apollo to be huge. I'd like to spread our art and music and message with the world, and I'd love to be able to just like keep doing it for my whole life because it's what I truly love. Our third album, our upcoming third album, the singles we've released so far have been getting um, you know, more eyes on them than our previous stuff. So I'm taking that as a good sign. And I'd like to for it to continue, growing. Yeah, I'm here's the thing. The honest truth is I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life, at the very least. Even if I never make a cent. But it'd be a lot easier if, I could afford to keep doing it without, sleeping on the streets, I guess. Yeah, and it's I know it's hard for like so many artists right now. But yeah, I do it's what I believe in and I want to see where it goes.
What do what do you what do you need? Because you've shared a lot, right? You've shared a lot as far as your struggles, whether it be personally or even societal struggles, right? That you've been through and that you've experienced. What do you feel like it is that you and your band needs to continue being successful and growing?
I guess just like more support, I guess would be the simplest answer. And, like the dream is always to have like, a major label support you, to have, like Sony or Universal or someone come along and be like, here's a bunch of money, make all the like, albums and music videos you want here. Like, here's a like, plane to go and forth or whatever. That'd be super cool. It's not always that easy. And so I guess in the meantime, community support. We have a website, hotapollo.com. You can buy some of our vinyls and shirts and hats and stuff. But even if you don't want to spend the money on buying merch, just like even spreading the word, checking out our one of our music videos or songs on wherever you listen to. I know a lot of people use Spotify, but it's not the best for a bunch of reasons. But if you use Spotify, hey, we're anywhere, Spotify, Apple, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, any platform you listen to music on, we're there. Listen to a song, and hey, if you like it, tell a friend, hey, this is a cool song. You should check out Hot Apollo. Even if you don't like it, lie to them. Or talk to your mail end and be like, hey, check out Hot Apollo. It's not for me, but you'll probably like it. Just talk about Hot Apollo. Um, and yeah, I think that's the very like base level of support. I don't know. Do you ever watch anime?
I did growing up, not so much
Yeah.
now.
Do you know Dragon Ball Z though?
Yes, yes, that
Okay.
was one of my favorites, one of them.
Yeah, you know that bit where he's summoning the spirit bomb and asking the people of Earth to give their energy to the spirit bomb so we can save the world?
Yeah.
It's like that, except the energy you need to give to our spirit bomb is telling people about Hot Apollo.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah. No, and the same thing with us. Listen, I'm gonna second what James just said. Okay, one moment podcast needs the same energy. Oh, I
I'll be
love it. Oh, wow, wow. Listen, James, we've spoken about a lot, but we have covered a lot, and there's so many barriers to continue breaking down, and there's so much progress to be made. One of my last few questions for you: if there's one thing that you want somebody to take away from this recording, what would it be?
your life's going to be a lot better if you find the freedom to be yourself, and from there, figure out how to be the best version of yourself. And that's been a lifelong, um, quest for me. But it's something that's brought, like, so much more color to my life, and I think that's kind of, um, yeah, the foundational part of my kind of philosophy.
Okay. And I love it. Find the freedom to be yourself. And that's what I love about all of us is, we have to be ourselves. We can't be what society tells us. We can't be what that person tells us or the next person tells us. We can't be what our family tells us. We all have to be our own unique individual selves.
Yeah. And I'm saying that, I will admit, there is a fair amount of privilege in saying that, because, a lot of people are in positions where they can't, afford, whether it's their job or some member of their family or whatever, they can't, afford to be fully unmasked at all times. But even if you can just like find, like one person in your life with whom you can be um fully yourself with, even that can change so much. In fact, our band's name, I don't know if we have time to go into this, but our band's
Go
name
ahead. Go
comes
ahead.
I had a friend, Hard Needles, in high school, with whom I briefly had a musical collaboration, and he was a big fan of beat poets like Allen Ginsberg. And Allen Ginsberg wrote a poem called "The Shrouded Stranger" about how the repressive conditions of early 20th century America, and how hard it was to be a gay man in this time. And the Hot Apollo is a line from that poem, and it's about these underground communities that were the only place where gay men could admit that they were gay men and hang out with other gay men and be fully themselves. And having that outlet, saved so many lives. So yeah, find one person, just one person that you can be your full, true, authentic self with, and that can just change so much.
Absolutely, 100% will second that. Find, it doesn't matter who it is. Find that one person you can be your true self with, because that right there will change your life, will change your feelings dramatically. And if you had to give a call to action for people, what will be your call to action?
There are so many huge issues in the world that need to be addressed, and like no one person can, has the resources to, attack all of them. But I guess like find one cause you believe in, and like hammer it hard and do whatever you can for it. Doesn't even have to be big, but if you can like find one thing you believe in, and a way even small to work towards it, you're making the world a better place.
Absolutely. Definitely agree with that. It's there's so many problems just going on in this world. And we all can't tackle everything all at once, but we can tackle a few things. Right. Find that one or two things, find those few things to narrow down, head first in and tackle them. Definitely would agree with you. So that being said, James, I am humbled. Thank you again for being on here. I sincerely and humbly do appreciate it. Are there any final thoughts that you would like to tell people? Maybe if they want to book you, book you in your band, if they want to have you come on and do a speaking engagement, anything related to that.
Yeah, as I said, well, I clearly love talking, so I'm always up to continue that. And I'm very easy to reach. Hotapollo@rocketmail.com is our email address. Hot Apollo on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, like Facebook, wherever you can find Hot Apollo. I'm very easy to reach, very responsive. So if you want to talk to me about like anything, I'm here for it. To contact me about anything, I'm here for it. And I've sincerely had an awesome time talking with you. You're a very wise and eloquent person, and yeah, this podcast is really cool.
Thank you. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our show for today. Listen, Hot Apollo on social media. We have also just recently expanded into many social media profiles too. So definitely check out Hot Apollo on social media. Check out One Moment Podcast. We are on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, Apple, Pandora, Deezer, Spotify. We're across the board on almost all major social media platforms. So check us both out. One Moment Podcast and Hot Apollo.